Hello, everyone. This is episode 3 of the Men of Principle podcast. I'm your host, Rich Fitzgerald, and today I'm accompanied by an incredible guest. I'll give you a quick, short bio on him before we get started. He currently, or I should say, he hails from Charleston, South Carolina. He has served the United States military for over 19 years. He's a devoted father, husband, and man of faith. Additionally, he's a dedicated martial artist for the last 14 years. He also has a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-jitsu, and he's also the owner of the Process Over Prize brand. So, Martin Thomas, everyone. Thanks, Martin, for being on the podcast today.
Thank you, man. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. So, I talked a little bit about how Martin owns the Process Over Prize brand. Can you tell us a little bit about what that brand is and how it came to get started in the first place?
Yeah, sure. So I'll kind of break down the logo. If you look at the logo, it's kind of homage to my family. There's two birds on there. You have a raven and a robin bird, which are the names of my daughters. The original logo had La Rutina in the center and the banner, which was homage to my wife, who's Hispanic. She's Venezuelan. We've since switched to have Process Over Prize in the banner, which is kind of a phrase. I wouldn't say it, I created it, but it was something growing up playing sports in high school, specifically wrestling. Our wrestling coach would drill into us, man, you got to trust the process. You got to be in love with the process. Anybody who's wrestled, the grind of cutting weight, transitioning for me from football to wrestling was always a big transition. So, that phrase kind of stuck with me throughout life. And then there's a chain at the top, the chain again representing our family, the family tied together with the close bond. So the brand started 5 years ago when I was here the last time. A couple friends, Anthony Gant being one of them, a mutual friend of ours, Dave Smith, Larry Black. We were just kind of talking about ways we could increase revenue and venture out to be our own, businessmen or entrepreneurs running our own business. So I was finishing up a master's program at the time, and part of the master's program was MBA. You had to come up with a business plan. What better business plan to execute than one that I created? So that was the inception of it. Started out just a jiu-jitsu and fitness apparel business. We've since branched into the podcast, as you know. I do jiu-jitsu seminars, jiu-jitsu lessons. My wife, Rena, runs the fitness and nutrition side of it, being a CrossFit coach and a nutrition coach. And then over the years, it's just kind of grown into what it is today. So
That's awesome. So it truly is like a family business then.
Absolutely, 100%. The goal now, I think, my wife and I both focus on, hopefully one day, handing it over to the girls and they have something, that they can carry forward. If nothing happens with it, cool. At least I started a business and ran it for a while, and it was successful. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, when I first thought about who I can have in my podcast, your name quickly came to mind because I feel like, man, like jiu-jitsu, black belt, man of God, family man, great husband, father, awesome military career, getting ready to wrap up, right? Own your own business, like, man, like you seem to have it together. And the fact that you name your business Process Over Prize, that says a lot about where you are and kind of who, what you stand for, So with that in mind, the Process Over Prize name, would you say that you think the prize is less important than the process, or do you think the process is just more important because, it's the means to the end goal?
There should be some value in the prize. So to answer your question, yes, I do think the process is valued more than the prize. And I'll give you an example. But I say that with a caveat that some people put more emphasis, more value in the prize, and they don't appreciate, to coin the phrase "process over prize." They don't appreciate the process that they're going through to get that prize. And I'll give you a basic example. I consider myself an amateur gardener, right? I can go to the store, buy some tomatoes, go home, do whatever, cook tomatoes, make tomato sauce. I love making tomato sauce. But growing tomatoes is a different process, right? So the prize being either one you do, you have tomatoes at the end. I learned more about keeping tomatoes ripe, the ideal temperature, watering, from growing my own tomatoes and then going to the store and picking up. Throughout that process, planting tomato seeds, watching it blossom, being able to grab the fruits of my labor, being the prize, right?
Yeah.
You gain more knowledge, you gain more experience, you appreciate more. You appreciate those tomatoes more.
Yeah,
And you grow
absolutely.
them,
Yeah.
and going here to Wise or going to the store here and picking up some tomato from the store. So
Yeah.
so I say if you put overvalue in the prize and you don't appreciate or put value in the process, then that's when I think some people kind of miss out on what it is, the experience you're going through.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I know we just got done watching the Super Bowl this weekend.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who love watching football, and there's a lot of people who don't even watch football, yet they still come and watch the Super Bowl every year. And I think it's because they want to see the two best teams in the world, who are the best at what they do, go against each other, right? And I think a lot of people, they see that and they think, man, that's so awesome. They see the end result, they see the Super Bowl winner, and they say, man, he's so lucky. But you and I both know it's not luck. It was years and years and years of training consistency that got him there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I know, let's see, it's middle February right now, right? We're like a month removed from New Year's, A lot of people had made a lot of big New Year's resolutions, and some people maybe have fallen off the tracks already, right? Which is okay, it's understandable. Everyone does that from time to time, right? I know you're very big, again, on process-oriented goals, just like I am. Do you have some examples or some advice you can give to people? If they've fallen off the tracks a little bit with their goals, how can they get back on the tracks? What can they do to still accomplish that goal?
Sure. First and foremost, I think it has to be something that you're self-motivated about. It can't be because, a group of people decide, hey, we want to do this in the new year. It may work out for you, but sometimes that falls short because you're not as motivated to do what everybody else in the group is willing to do.
Yeah.
But I think first and foremost, in order to follow through, in order to stay committed, sometimes it requires a lifestyle change or a change in your routine per se. A perfect example, about a month ago, Pastor Adam talked about him wanting to reduce the amount of time he spent on his phone when he woke up in the morning on social media and increase, his time in the Bible, right? He talked about a lifestyle change when he went to bed the night before, put his phone on the bottom, put his Bible on the top. First thing he's grabbing is his Bible, right? Yeah. That's a perfect example of a lifestyle change, a commitment he made to increasing his time, studying the Word, decreasing his time on social media when he wakes up first thing in the morning. So be willing to make the change in your life if it requires it, or be willing to change the routine to follow through with it. I think if you kind of set out to do something, you don't change the way you were doing things before, or you don't change the way you focus on it, it's going to be hard to stay committed to that. The common example everybody uses is getting in shape, right? Mm-hmm. If you say, hey, this is my year, I want to get to X amount of pounds on the scale, or I want my body to look like this, or I want to fit, in these type of clothes. You continue on, eating the way you were, maybe not going to the gym or adding in, fitness or nutrition, kind of haphazardly and not having a plan for it. It's going to be tough to stay committed to it. Hence why, February, March is like, January is the greatest increase in gym memberships. February, March, across the U.S. It's like a 50% attrition in gym memberships. Yeah. Because 2 months in, people are like, yeah, I'm not going to stick with it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. And it's funny you made the reference about Pastor Adam. For those who don't know, we actually go to the same church, and it just slipped my mind as you were talking about that. I was like, man, that was a great example he made. I know for me personally, I have a list of 10 things on my phone. Every day I check my to-do list. Not all of them do I accomplish every day, but train jiu-jitsu is on there, for instance, right? I only do that 5 or 6 times a week. I don't do it every single day. But of those lists of 10 things, my goal personally is to hit like 8 of them. If I can hit 8 of them a day, I know I'm doing well. And I characterize them or categorize them like physical, like so either training jiu-jitsu, going to the gym. Spiritual, read my Bible, pray, right? Financial, not spending stuff on things I want when I know I shouldn't buy it, right? And those are just some examples that I have. Would you feel comfortable kind of telling us a few of your own personal process-oriented goals that kind of help you day in, day out, week in, week out?
Yeah, sure. So I have a lifelong goal to be able to hand, or somebody, if I'm not here to do it, hand over a series of books or journals that I've journaled to my kids. So journaling, to answer your question. Yeah, awesome. You can't really put a value on it. There's nobody there to evaluate, my journaling, if you will. Mm-hmm. But my goal is my kids will know, just about every experience from the time that I started journaling. I even backdated as much as I can remember. My goal is to somebody, if I'm not here to do it, hand that over to them so that they can live my life, through journal. So I had to make the time to say, hey, I'm going to sit down and journal. When I first started out, I was journaling pretty much every day. So taking a step back, the inception of it was I deployed 2 weeks after my oldest daughter was born.
Wow.
And it came to, I realized that if something were to happen to me on this deployment, my daughter could very well never remember who I was. So I'm like, man, I got to do something. 2 things I did. My wife bought a book that I read and recorded, so she got used to hearing my voice. I started journaling. I didn't journal as much then as I did as I increased over time. But now I try to sit down on Wednesdays and Sundays at least, if I haven't done it throughout the week, and I make a deliberate effort to journal, what happened that week, significant things, and then kind of just, how I feel, so that they can see, throughout time, what I was thinking, what I was experiencing, my thoughts, the way I made decisions going forward. Again, there's really no prize in that, or the prize is, the journal's being handed over to my kids. I may or may not be here to see that day, I won't know if that fulfilled like what their expectation was of me turning over my journals to them.
Yeah.
So that's very, process oriented. There's really no prize for me to gain.
No, and that's an incredible example because I have 3 sons as well, and I think as fathers, I think real men, real fathers, they really take emphasis or take ownership. Of their kids' development.
Yeah, sure.
And I think a lot of times, especially when our kids are young, they don't quite understand what's going on in the heads of men, right? Like we try to be stoic, we try to be, conservative, we try to be strong for our family. But maybe behind the curtain, or at least in the back of your mind, right, you got a lot of concerns and things you're working through, external stressors, right?
Yeah, sure.
And for you to develop that process of journaling, that way your kids can see that later on and really know how you felt, can help them and encourage them as they become men or women, right,
Mm-hmm.
serving our society. So, man, that's awesome. So as you know, social media, right? Social media is a huge thing. It's got its benefits and it's got its downfalls, right?
Sure.
I think a lot of people, and I wanted to kind of get your opinion on this. A lot of people, specifically men, especially in the beginning of the year, right? They put their goals out there. They make these big, grandiose goals. And I was curious as to whether or not you agreed with the fact that maybe there's a lot of people out there who publicize publicly that they're making these large goals just to appear masculine, just to appear overconfident. Are you seeing that as more of a trend in our society today, that you think people are starting to do that?
In my opinion, social media makes it more available. It makes it readily accessible for us to see it. It brings it to our attention more. Mm-hmm. I don't have any statistics to back this up, but I like to think that it was almost always a thing, and I'll tell you why in a second. It was almost always a thing, but we just see it more now. Obviously, the more time we spend on social media. The example I'll give you is I graduated high school in 2001, right? Mm-hmm. We can all sit back and think about the guys and gals who are like, man, I'm about to do this. I'm about to come up on this. I'm about to have this huge break. There's nothing wrong with having goals and aspirations to do great things. Fast forward 2022, last year, I went home October to bury my grandmother, ran into some same people from high school. 21 years later, man, I'm about to do this, I'm about to do that. I'm like, bro, you're about to do this for 21 years. Like, hey, good on you for, maintaining a positive mental attitude about it, but at some point you got to produce, man, Yeah. So, I think absolutely, the same guys and gals that were doing that, throughout their time in life, I think it happens, we see it more on social media because it's more available. But I think back to times, in high school where you didn't have the smartphones and social media. I can remember a group of people who were always like, man, I'm about to do this next year, I'm about to start on the football team. Bro, you never played football a day in your life, man. I've been playing football since 9. Never seen you play football, man. You're going to come and take our spot? Crazy, man. So, I think social media does make it easier for everybody to see. It publicizes it more. And to some extent, it may encourage other people to do it more, to kind of keep up with the Joneses, if you will. But I don't think it's something that just happened over time with the inception of social media.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's maybe some value then for people who do have large goals to keep those quiet so that way it's more internally driven than externally driven?
Yeah, it depends on the personality. I've always been a type of person. I've never been never considered myself someone who needed to be part of a group. Kind of not really a loner, but like I was comfortable with me doing my own thing. For some people who need like the group motivation, that may be good for them. That may be good for you to hold you accountable or to keep you honest. If you put on social media, yeah, this is my year, I'm gonna do this, this, and this. Everybody's like peeking, like, hey, I haven't seen you post about it, man. What's going on? But for the people who are more focused on head down, and I let my results show what I've been working in the dark. That's okay too. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. So switching gears a little bit, I know earlier I talked about the Super Bowl. I know you're a big Baltimore Ravens fan, so I'm not gonna hit you too hard there. Next year's another year, right? You never know. They got a lot of playmakers on their team, but one of your legendary linebackers, perhaps the best linebacker of all time, Ray Lewis. He was quoted at one time saying, "The hardest thing to do is work hard when no one's watching." Do you have advice for men out there who, they understand they may not get any public recognition for what they're doing, and more often than not, you're not going to, right?
Sure.
Do you have any advice for those guys and how they can stay motivated or what they have to do to kind of stay on the path, even though they're not going to get any recognition from it?
Yeah, so that kind of goes back to the point I was making about the personality types, the person who maybe needs a little more praise. I think it may be tougher to work when nobody else is looking. The self-driven person who's essentially been doing that, it's not as hard for them. But I think to answer your question is, and I'm going to quote Eric Thomas, no relation. He says you have to have a why, right? And your why has to be the thing that wakes you up and keeps you going when nobody else is there to push you. David Goggins says, you reach in the cookie jar, and you pull out all the memories of people who doubted you. So out of the two of them, you just have to have something that keeps you grounded and keeps you honest and accountable. Whether that's another person, you put your trust in a friend to help you along the way, there's nothing wrong with that. Or you're self-driven, you have a why, you have an outcome or a prize in mind that's going to drive you through the process. So I think it depends a lot on the personality, the person who's self-driven or the person that maybe needs a little more encouragement. You got to have somebody to keep you honest.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one of your greatest physical, tangible accomplishments as someone's publicly recognized you is getting your jiu-jitsu black belt, right? Yeah. You've been training for over 14 years now, right? What is it about the process of training jiu-jitsu that keeps you coming back to the mats? Like, why do you keep training after all these years?
Yes, starting out, it was just like a curiosity. I wrestled growing up. I played football. The first time I trained jiu-jitsu, I got destroyed, man. I got smoked. I was like, wow.
That makes two of us.
I was like, wow, man. I got to figure out what's going on. That's not supposed to happen, So, early days, it was just like curiosity of like, man, this is something that's new, something I can get better at, something that I haven't cracked the code on. So that was the deciding factor early out and starting jiu-jitsu and grappling. It has since transitioned to, Coach Kelly talks about this, being more therapeutic. I can have the worst day, whether it be at work, whether it be just, stuff, piling on you, life happens. I come to the mats, man, when my feet hit the mats, I don't hear anything. I don't remember anything. I don't feel anything. Yeah. It's like walking through, I can imagine walking into like outer space and like you leave everything, man. I don't hear anything outside of the mats. I don't see, hear, or feel anything other than jiu-jitsu. I don't know how that happens, but it just happens. So when I leave the mats, I can face those issues, problems, or things that's going on way better. So it becomes therapeutic. It has become therapeutic for me. So, to wrap up, two things early on was just a curiosity, and then now it's more so just a therapy. And still, more so the curiosity. I try every time I'm on the mats to get, 2% better, like Myron Roll says. Every time I hit the mats, I'm looking at what I can improve on, what I can gain. Also, how I can make those around me better so they ultimately help to make me better as well, too.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's my experience as well, too. Obviously, I'm not a black belt yet, but it's very therapeutic for me, too, right? Like you said, a lot of life stressors, regardless of what they are, the moment you come on the mat, they all seem to go away. It is an amazing therapy. Of all the black belts you've met and you train with, are there common or similar traits that you've seen these people that kind of you feel have allowed them to get to black belt and beyond and kept training jiu-jitsu? Is there some common traits you see in those people?
Yeah, dedication and commitment. You can't, even those, there's kind of a joke going around about people who get like the fake black belts, from the schools, the belt factory schools. Even that individual has some level of commitment. Maybe different than other people, but they were committed to sticking around long enough to get a black belt. But you see the people like, Professor Kelly, my professor Fredson, man, that dude's been a black belt longer than I've been training jiu-jitsu. Other, Master Dalla, like Lord Irvin, all of those guys here in this area, you just see like the level of commitment it takes to stick around, knowing, first time you came in the door, you get destroyed, you leave, and you come back, you know, like what you're gonna face when you get on the mats, but you still come back, dedicated, even you being a purple belt, you know that the more you come, the more you stay dedicated to this. The sky's the limit on how and when you progress.
Absolutely. Obviously, a lot of people who listen to our podcast, both of our podcasts, a lot of them don't train jiu-jitsu, right?
Sure.
What would you say are some benefits, specifically for men, but I'll say everyone, what benefits can people expect if they wanted to start training jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I think one thing you get from jiu-jitsu or some aspects of other organized sports as well too is like the group, the camaraderie you get on the mats. We talk about it. In the Marine Corps, the camaraderie, the cohesion you get from unit to unit. You can't explain that to anybody. I find myself. I was joking with one of my cousins when I went home. His dad is a pastor. I'm like, man, I understand now. His level of like frustration of like trying to bring people to the faith. I'm like, bro, jiu-jitsu is awesome for you. Just try it. You gotta believe. You gotta believe. So a man or woman of the faith feels like, hey, religion is good for you. You can't explain that until somebody experiences it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that camaraderie, the cohesion you build on the mat in the community is one thing. Everybody talks about the gambit of physical, mental, but that cohesion, camaraderie you build on the mat with the people you train with is awesome. Man. You think about it, you have to be a little insane or have a lot of trust to allow somebody to choke you out, right? And not kill you.
Yeah,
like we're training. I'm gonna let Rich take my back and choke me. I have confidence. I trust him that he's not gonna hold on to the choke. When I tap, you gotta be a little slightly crazy to have that level of trust in somebody.
Absolutely.
But you don't get that by casually meeting somebody at work and going for lunch. You only get that here. On that, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know jiu-jitsu brings guys close. There's a great camaraderie there. Marine Corps, same thing. But man, if you get Marines to train jiu-jitsu, that is like a special type of brotherhood right there. It really is.
For sure.
And as you know, our podcast, right, it's called the Men of Principle Podcast. So I want to wrap up and kind of ask you your opinion on if there were one or two traits or values that men in our society can improve upon. What would that be? What would you like to see improve in our society and other men?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that came to mind was communication. You hinted on it earlier. I think there's societal pressure on men to be like a stoic character, show no emotion, have no feelings, or just kind of like a blank slate. That's not good for any person, let alone men. So communicate, whether it's you communicate with your significant other, whether you communicate here with somebody on the match, you got to communicate because the statistic you talked about in your podcast of the suicide rate between men and women, again, can't back it up, but I would like to think that a lot of that is because the individual didn't feel like they can communicate what was going on with them. Sadly enough, my time in the Marine Corps, I've had Marines who've taken their own lives. I've known other Marines who've taken their own lives, and think back like, some of them there was no sign, man, no sign at all. But like that person felt like they couldn't communicate or they couldn't talk about, what was going on, or they couldn't, work through it.
Yeah.
I think communication is the biggest thing. Some people may say, you shouldn't be showing your feelings now. That's crazy, man. Like anybody can hold some of the stuff in that you carry around with you. You got to communicate. So.
Absolutely. It's healthy to talk to other people about your issues, right?
For sure, man. For sure.
Yeah, there's a reason we always say, like, hey, if you need help, obviously go see a psychologist, go see a therapist, go see someone in the medical field who can take care of you. But also, there's a lot of people, probably in your own family, your own circle of influence, who are willing to listen to you, and it helps you, mentally, just to get that off your chest sometimes, right?
For sure.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Yeah. Obviously, getting on a brighter note, I know we just talked about very serious subjects, but if anyone on the podcast, if they want to reach out to you, kind of learn more about you, find you on social media, learn more about your brand, or maybe buy some of your awesome jiu-jitsu apparel, where can they find you? How can they find you?
So we got the Instagram handle is everything is Process Over Prize. So Instagram, Process Over Prize, Facebook, Process Over Prize. The only thing that's different, if you type into Google Process Over Prize apparel, it'll still pull up, but the website still says La Rutina on it from the old one. Email is larutina at gmail, or larutinallc@gmail.com. YouTube page is Process Over Prize. So if you type in Process Over Prize, you're bound to find something in there that'll link you. But yeah, absolutely. Anybody who wants to reach out, talk, communicate, if you will. Any swag. If you want to listen to the podcast, you type in Process Over Prize in Google, you're gonna find just about everything that I have. So.
That's awesome. And I can validate, because today I actually did Google Process Over Prize, and then La Rutina popped up because I was looking at buying more of his stuff.
Yeah.
I should have worn his shorts today. Like, his shorts are, I keep telling, even Coach Kelly the other night, said, like, oh, I gotta wear his shorts because those are the most comfortable shorts,
awesome.
man. They're awesome, yeah. So I gotta wear your swag next time. But man, I really appreciate you being on the show, Martin. Thank you, man.
Absolutely.
Again, I'm very honored to have you as our first guest. I think about men of principle. Like I said, you check all the boxes. Like, strong, tough guy, Marine, military service member, right? Jiu-jitsu black belt. You're a great father, great husband, man of God. Like, it doesn't really come a whole lot better. Obviously, I'm sure you would admit you have faults, you have flaws, things you're trying to work on. I know I do for sure. And as men, I think we have to encourage each other to say, hey, yeah, you may have this issue, but you can overcome it, right? You can be better. You can, like you said, Myron Roll said, 2% better every day. Myron Roll, by the way, shout out. I'm a Florida State alumni. He's an awesome guy. Florida State football. But again, thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this with us. Thank you, Thad, for all your work behind the camera. He's an unappreciated but very appreciated guy. Unnoticed, I should say. Unnoticed guy, very appreciated for what he's doing for us. Thank you, Koa Team Martial Arts, for hosting our podcast today. And thank you for all of you who are listening and watching. Continue to support us if you can, please, on this journey. And again, follow Process Over Prize. He's got some great stuff out there. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it.